we talked in the past couple weeks about reports that Microsoft might invest as much as 10 billion into OpenAI. And now they've actually announced formally that companies can now access OpenAI's most advanced AI models and tools through this new Microsoft Azure OpenAI service. So, as part of Azure's OpenAI service, you can actually access and build on top of solutions like ChatGPT 3.5, which is the model that's powering ChatGPT. You can
GPT
build,
3.5, not ChatGPT 3.5, just to clarify.
sorry, that was my mistake. GPT 3.5 is the model that is powering ChatGPT. And then you can also access things like Codex, which is another model, an AI model that generates code, as well as DALI 2, which generates images. So Microsoft says as part of this Azure OpenAI service, you'll be able to access those types of models, build on top of them, integrate them into your business. And also they have hinted that soon, they did not give a date, you will actually be able to access ChatGPT as well. So that is coming down the line. And this obviously opens up huge commercial opportunities for Microsoft, but also opens up incredible opportunities for customers who are using Azure OpenAI service, because you can now start using these types of powerful tools in your own business. Now, one interesting aside here that's related to some of the regulatory and legal concerns we've discussed is that Microsoft has also publicly, with this announcement, taken the time to talk about their guardrails that regulate how this all works. So currently, and this could change, developers are required to apply for access to Azure OpenAI service. And as part of that, they have to describe their intended use cases and applications before they can get access and do anything with the tool. So Microsoft has been pretty public about being responsible with rolling out this technology commercially. So initially, Paul, I wanted to get your thoughts. What do you think of this latest move by Microsoft, especially given what we've talked about on the previous couple of podcasts?
So the guidance I'll give to people on this is when we started studying AI, I started back in 2011. I had no idea what I was looking at. Like when news would come out, I had no idea if it was significant or not. And so over time, over the last 11 years, what I've done is curated a very specific group of people, journalists, analysts, entrepreneurs, investors. And when something happens that I think is significant, and I've gotten better, obviously, over time at gauging for myself whether something is significant. I saw the article last night and I'll go look and say, okay, what are they saying? Like, this seems like a really big deal to me, which is what happened yesterday. I saw this immediately and I was like, well, that's a big deal. So I go to Twitter, start looking at my list, and sure enough, you're starting to see right away the tweets. So you had Eric Horvitz, who is the chief scientific officer of Microsoft, tweeted, API access now available, GPT 3.5, Codex, DALI 2, API access to ChatGPT on deck. Satya, the CEO of Microsoft, tweeted. Greg Brockman, the co-founder and CTO of OpenAI, tweeted. So everyone that was anyone at the leadership teams of these companies was tweeting this story, which is when you know it's a big deal. And I think it's ironic, like they just released this sort of blog post. Like I was kind of laughing as a marketer last night to like this big announcement, and like they just put out a blog post and do some tweets. It's like Elon Musk style marketing. We just tweet the news. So it's a big deal because the people who know think it's a big deal. And that's often like just a litmus test for me, is like, are the people who are on the inside thinking this is a big a deal as I think it is? So the answer to this one was yes. The second piece is there's been so much rumor for the last few weeks about OpenAI and Microsoft. Like you said, we talked about on the show at length. And it was the first moment where I looked at someone, I was like, oh, this is Microsoft officially saying this. Like they're actually acknowledging something. And there's been very little that I've seen come out directly from Microsoft in recent weeks about any of this stuff. It's just been all hearsay and sourced, media articles. So I think it's big because it's Microsoft stepping out and saying, here is what we're doing. It's starting to show how they're going to infuse this. And I assume we'll probably in the near future hear the final details about whatever the investment ends up being that they're supposed to be making. But I also immediately went and looked and said, when is Google's next earnings call, because I think what we have to be constantly looking at this year, and we talked about this on the previous episode, is the domino effect of the big tech players and the plays they're going to make into AI. So
Mhm.
Microsoft, my one former PR person read into this is they tried to get out ahead of something else. Like, I feel like something else is about to break, because the news of this just sort of got out real fast
Mhm.
through these channels. And sometimes you'll do that if you're trying to get out ahead of something else is coming. So I feel like they got this out, and the answer to when is Google's earnings call, Alphabet, I think technically the parent company, is February 2nd. There is no way in my mind that they can't tell the story of what they're doing with AI before that. They're going to get grilled by analysts on that call.
Mm.
So if you go into the earnings call on February 2nd as Alphabet and you don't have answers to what you're going to do to combat Microsoft's play with OpenAI, I would think your stock's going to get crushed. So we've been saying this for years of like, look at the analyst reports. What are they saying about AI as like a way to project out where these companies are going and which ones are actually the best investments based on what they're doing with AI. Um, I, I I will be fascinated to hear that call or to read the transcripts from that call. So I just think that it's a big deal because it integrates OpenAI. It's a big deal because Microsoft is officially saying something, and it might be a bigger deal because of what comes next, because it's gonna trigger Google. And well, it may need to be the final triggering moment, but everything that's going on is going to cause Google, and I assume Meta, um, and probably some other players, to come out with something of significance around their play with AI. And I've heard, like you and I are both big fans of the All In podcast.
Yep.
I was hearing like them. The one theory was that they open source Lambda, that they just like,
Mm.
they're like, fine, just let it all out. Like, we're gonna play this game, like we'll just let it all go, let Palm go and Lambda go. Like, and I mean, is that a realistic play? I don't know, but Lambda is the large language model, the main model that you hear about at Google. If you're not familiar, so part of it they're saying is like Google may have better tech, and just like let's let it all out, and then just like take control back of the market. And then I still think that if Meta's smart, like Facebook, they recapitalize the AI function. They have a massive AI research lab led by
Mhm.
Jan LeCun doing insanely cool stuff, and I don't know that the average business person even knows it's happening. Like, I mean, we know, but I think we take for granted that we follow the space so closely that we know generally like kind of what they're working on there. But I don't know that the average business person even knows that FAIR exists at and who Jan LeCun is. Like, that's crazy to me that there are business people today who don't know who Jan LeCun and Demis Hassabis and Jeff Hinton and all these players are, but that's
Mm.
actually probably the majority that have no idea. So we always tell people, read Genius Makers, then you'll understand. Like,
Yep. Genius Makers by Cade Metz, who
yeah,
is a New York Times AI reporter and also spoke at our Macon conference one year. Definitely one of the seminal books in figuring this stuff out, I think we both would agree.
yeah, yeah,
So that relates to kind of the final question I have for you here. And as we wrap up today's episode, you mentioned you think that maybe CEOs and executives probably don't know who a lot of these major players are. And that seems very obvious. And we've talked about Chat GPT has obviously changed things pretty significantly in building broader awareness about what we've been talking about for
yeah.
almost five years now. Um, with the Microsoft plus OpenAI slash ChatGPT moves going on, if I'm a CEO or an executive who hasn't been paying attention, there's probably a good chance I'm starting to. And there's probably a good chance at a bigger enterprise, especially, that I know for a fact our organization is using Microsoft Azure or considering it or something similar. If I'm looking at this as a leader, what should I even be thinking about if I'm getting kind of blindsided being like, wait a second, the thing being used in my kid's school to like cheat on tests is now being available potentially in the technology we're using every day? How do I take advantage of this? How do I catch up, get up to speed, start thinking about it? What do I do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenging question. I think, if I was in those shoes, I would probably be looking around my organization saying who needs to be on the committee to figure this out. Like,
Mm.
if you have a chief AI officer, great. Like, obviously, that's your first call and maybe the only call you need to make. But a lot of middle market and enterprise companies, certainly small business, don't have a head of AI. So I think you're trying to figure out who in the organization can help figure all this out very quickly. And then how can you build a roadmap to become AI emergent as an organization, to infuse AI into marketing, sales, service, ops, product, HR, finance, all these areas over time. Obviously, if you have Microsoft Azure, your first call is probably to whoever owns that relationship and saying,
Hmm.
what should we be doing here? You and I did a consulting gig for a healthcare company a few years back where this is what happened. Like, we were in there, we're analyzing the site and the recommendation engine that didn't exist. But we basically were like, hey, you can build a recommendation engine based on this, and this can drive revenue here, and kind of laid out this roadmap, but you need these capabilities. And the tech person was like, oh, we have Microsoft Azure and they're willing to give us credits to use the machine learning capabilities. It's
Hmm.
like, well, there you go. Like, and so all it took was like building the business case and having the right person in the room who knew that Microsoft was incentivizing the use of their AI tools for this type of organization, and off and running they went. So yeah, I mean, I would look at whether it's Google Cloud or AWS. They all have AI capabilities. So I would start with that. Who is your core cloud provider? Again, for context, AWS dominates this market. I don't know what the
Hmm.
current market share is, but I would say somewhere between 38 and 43% or so of the market is owned by AWS. Um, then Microsoft is in, I think, the low to mid 20s, and then Google Cloud is somewhere around high single digits, low teens in terms of market share for cloud. So this is a major play by Microsoft also from a cloud perspective. You know,
Hmm.
can they catch up to AWS, which just seems like the runaway winner in this space with a play like this. But yeah, I mean, as a CEO, I would figure out, who do I have on my team that can figure this stuff out. And if you don't have anybody internally, then get somebody, like either get an outside consulting firm or go bring somebody in. But good luck finding that person. I mean, it's the business savvy AI people aren't growing on trees right now. Like that. That's like one of the kind of the trends or bets we're making in 2023 is AI savvy business people and practitioners are not in high demand right now. Like, the people who actually understand AI and can apply it to content marketing or advertising or social. I think by the end of 2023, you're not hiring someone unless they're AI savvy. Like, you
Hmm.
either have your internal training program to make them AI savvy, or you are actively searching for practitioners and leaders who not only are good at their discipline domain, but understand artificial intelligence and can help move your organization into the future very quickly.
That's the money quote right there that we end the podcast on. Paul, thank you as always for all the time and insight and sharing your insights with the audience. I think people are going to get a lot of value out of this episode.